Awesome. Well, that was a great segment on credit, guys. I want to go right over to the next one, which is setting a realistic budget. And yeah, this is also coming before you even come into a mortgage application, because it's important to be realistic with what you're able to pay now. It's great that in your heart and your mind, you want to be a homeowner and you want to buy a place. But when it really comes down to it, whether you can afford it or not, and whether you're actually comfortable with it or not, it really comes down to setting yourself a budget. Like knowing what your monthly expenses are, knowing what your savings are, having savings. If you don't, get some padding done, get some down payment saved, but really be meticulous about your budget. Know where you're spending your money, know where your money is going, because if you don't manage it, it's going to manage you.
So important.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that when it comes to creating. What are some tactics you guys have for sharing with people how to create a budget, and what type of budgeting things they should consider before they apply for their mortgage?
One of the things that you get approved for is on your gross income. So, really understanding that what you bring in net is what you're actually going to be paying on. So although you get approved for, let's say, a lot more with your gross income, you really have to determine, what the actual income that's coming in, and then, plan around that. Because I've seen plenty of times where people get approved for, a really high amount, and they can pay it, on paper, but when you really put it down and you look at their debts, they're paying, $600 in car payments, a combined total of maybe like $500 in credit cards. It starts to add up, and it's going to chip away at their debt to income ratio. So I think just knowing what you can actually play based off your raw income is going to give you the best clarity.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we're going to approve you if you're making, $200,000 a year gross. That's what we're going to use to qualify you, which is very, very different than what you actually take home. The other thing that we don't account for in loan applications is, let's say you have a great nonprofit that you actually provide, monthly you contributions, or you go to church and you give that 10% tithe. We don't know who you are, but there's a lot of you that do that, and that's one of the questions we don't ask on the loan application. So consider and factor that in as well. The other thing is cell phones. We don't account for cell phone bills. We don't account for Hulu, HBO apps, and all that stuff.
Those things add up.
Exactly.
The utility bills and all that stuff.
So those don't factor in. So you really have to consider that. And right now, with interest rates the way they are, plus the home prices, it's really getting, people where their affordability is very, very difficult. And it's difficult, not just here in San Diego, it's in the nation. Yeah. So those are really things to consider. Is the payment that it used to be for me, like I say, I wouldn't be able to make a $7,000 payment right now, because I've been so used to making a $300 to $3,500 monthly payment. And to see these new payments is just, you got to be better prepared for that.
Yeah. Something I know in the past, I was telling people is, like, if you're getting yourself ready to buy a house, is look at what your current rent payment is. Look, after all your expenses every single month, how much money do you have left? Because if it really push came to shove, whatever you're paying for rent and however much you have left over is what you could, quote unquote, afford in theory. Now, I'm also saying that you should be saving some money, investing some money, whether it's your 401k, you're doing IRA, you're just putting it in the bank, whatever you're doing, that should be part of your budget as well. So my general rule of thumb with people is like, hey, take whatever you're paying for rent now. That's $3,000. Okay, you have $1,000 left at the end of the month. Cool, $4,000. That means your comfort level of, if push comes to shove, you could spend $4,000 a month. Now, the recommendation would be, if you have enough of a timeline and an on-ramp for 3 months of that and 6 months of that, well, see what kinds of things transpire in your life over 3 months and 6 months, and does your budget still fit? At the end of that, do you have $6,000 extra dollars after 6 months? Then that means that $4,000 every month is still adequate for you. You need new tires for the car. The brakes got to get fixed. Emergency hospital bill. Whatever it is that might be coming up, you have to account for, because those things are still going to happen when you own a house. It's not just happening because you're renting.
You got to have a war chest, and it used to be that you have to have at least 3 months to be able to live off in case you lost a job. Now it's increased to 6 months. Probably you want to have that in there, because it's taking longer for people to really find that job. Things are different.
Well, and there's things that come along with owning a house that, your rent it's baked into your rent. Maintenance costs, some utilities, depending on what kind of building you're living in or what community, even the trash bill. that might be included in your rent. Those things are not included in your residence. I mean, depending on, again, condo, townhome, single family house, so some of those things that might be tucked into your rent payment may or may not be part of your housing payment when it comes to qualification. And you got to remember some of those things.
No, absolutely. A lot of times, we get approved and we're looking for these homes and we see this home. We're like, we love this. And it could be $20,000, $30,000 above what you've been approved for. But this is where you see yourself, which is great. It's great to see yourself, visualize yourself and say, hey, this is where I'm going to create all the memories with my family, etc. But at the same time, you got to pay attention to those numbers. You got to pay attention to what you're going to sacrifice in order to be there.
Yeah.
And everything does come out of sacrifice. The great thing is rates will go down, so at least we can count that you're going to be refinancing with time. And the cool thing about that is if you strategically plan yourself, it's like you can, feels like you're skipping 2 months payments. Even though there's no such thing as a free lunch, everything's paid for in your closing costs, you're not skipping anything. But because we pay our mortgage payment in arrears, it seems like we're skipping 2 months payments.
Right.
But at the same time, it does allow for people to save up, at least mentally think, I am skipping, I'm going to put this money aside. And that helps you build that war chest.
Yeah. Well, if you find yourself in a position where you're not sure what your monthly budget needs to look like, or you don't have a monthly mortgage calculator to identify a payment 1, payment 2, payment 3, we actually have one that we'd be happy to send you if you wanted to see what different mortgage payments look like, to then compare it to where your current budget is and then what it might be given the price and what you're looking for as the type of home and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So.
And you know what? A lot of these mortgage calculators that are online, it's just telling you principal and interest. Add the HOA in there, add the property tax, and make sure that in your area, you're not just really Googling, you're like ChatGPT, you're trying to figure out with the county assessors in that area. You could log in, ChatGPT, a county assessors in Arlington, Tennessee, right? And it'll tell you descriptively what that property tax is, so you can implement that into that calculation. I just go with, I see here that it's only 0.5%, and once you identify that property, it's more like 0.8% or 0.1 some percent. It makes a difference.
Yeah.